I'm Patrick Pahl. I work with most of you all, everyone else I know, other than maybe 2 people here. I work for Loves. I am an iOS developer under Billy. He asked me to do a talk. He said, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, Apple Maps is cool. We don't use it in our app, so I'd like to learn more about it. So he's like, okay, sure. So that's what we're talking about today. I'm no means an expert on it, but I found MapKit is just an enormous API, so there's a lot you can do with it. So I'm just going to talk about a small fraction of its capabilities today. And in lieu of doing a big, long presentation or keynote with a whole lot of basically pictures of code, I'm just going to hop into code and do some demos and show you along the way how everything's working behind the scenes. And I want to also say that today we're going to talk about core location, so getting the user's location, putting pins on the map, drawing a route between them, geocoding, reverse geocoding, and also a couple newer features that Apple has added to maps like clustering and some easier custom annotations. So with that, I want to just hop into a little example app that I built. So very simple. I'm just going to talk about what happens when you first fire it up. So when we first open up this app, what we want to do is get the user's location. And so what we do is just press allow. All set. Do I need a little closer? Thank you. Appreciate it. So we get a little alert that pops up here, basically asking for location, a little bit of text here below, which is just saying is your message to the user about why you need to ask for the location. From here, you can either accept or you allow it. So you hit allow, boom, it zooms in on user location, puts a little blue point on the map, and from there, I'm going to go ahead and talk about everything that went on behind the scenes to get to that point. So when you first create a MapKit project in Storyboard, pretty simple. You just want to throw a MapKit view onto the view controller, and from there in your actual view controller, just make sure to import MapKit and core location. You want to make sure that your view controller conforms to the CL location manager delegate and the MK map view delegate. Then you also just want to create an outlet from Storyboard onto your view controller for the map view outlet. And then you also want to go into the property list and add the privacy, location, when in use, usage description. So there are 2 ways you can get the user's location, or 2 types, and that is always on or just whenever the user has the app running. So generally preferable to have it just when the app is running, because that way you're not tracking the user all the time, which you better have a very good reason to do that if you want to do it. And 2, it also drains the user's battery a lot more if you always are tracking their location. So definitely recommend using the when in use option. From there, you want to create your location manager, and when the app fires up, this is when we're going to go ahead and check for location services. And what that does is we're going to go see if they have location services enabled. And that's the happy path in which we go ahead and make sure that we set up the delegate for location manager, and then we set up the desired accuracy. So you could do, like in this example, we're just doing nearest 10 meters. You can do very best accuracy, which is a little bit more intensive on your battery. There are other options if you don't care about being exactly where the user is, just the general area. And from that point, we're going to check the authorization status on the location manager. So first case, when you first open up the app, never before, we're just going to request when in use authorization. So we're just going to say, hey, you've never opened this app before. Is it okay if we have your location? Another case is denied. So you could pop open the app and they've denied you before. So in that case, you could throw an alert to the user saying, hey, you've denied access to our app. If you want to go ahead and set it up again, just go to settings and enable that there. There's another case called restricted, which is more rare, but that's basically when you have parental controls on an app. And basically you can throw a alert to the user saying, hey, your parents or whichever entity is in charge of this app has disallowed us tracking your location. But if we are given access, then we go ahead and fire up the location manager, start updating the location, and then we can just use a simple method that just centers on the user location, where we just basically say, hey, we want to have like 4,000 meters latitude and 4,000 meters longitude, so you can just say how far zoomed in you're going to be. At that point, we'll go to this method that's part of MK-MapViewDelegate, or part of core location, where you just did update user locations. And in this case, you don't want to constantly be getting the user's location. You basically, in most cases, you just want to get it once and then stop updating that location. And then you can just save that to a local variable. And then I just added a couple print statements for the fun of it, so you can see exactly where you are on the map, the latitude and longitude. So that being said, now that we have location, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about getting a route and getting the user's location, geocoding, and reverse geocoding. So again, here just in our little demo app, I created a method that's going to get our location. It's going to turn that into an address and just pop it into the start text field. And then we're going to go ahead and put a end destination. So I'm just going to throw in Austin. And so it's smart enough to figure out that Austin, you're probably talking about Austin, Texas. And then a route. So here you can see it threw a start location on the map and end location on the map, and we also drew this route right here. So how did we actually accomplish that? So we fired off a method that gets coordinates for the location. So what I'm doing here, first of all, is just a little cleanup. I'm just making sure if we have any old routes or annotations on the map, I'm going to clear those initially. I'm going to go ahead and just clear any text, or make sure there actually is text in the start address and the end address text field. And from there, we can hop into geocoding. So what geocoding is we're basically going to give it that location or an address, and from the address, it's going to create a coordinate for us. So we've got the geocoder, and we're just going to geocode the address string. And with that address, it's going to come back with hopefully place marks and hopefully not an error. So if we're clear of an error, we basically want to look at the place marks array, which is this, and just grab the first place mark we have there. And from there, we can just go ahead and build our coordinates. So we just get the place mark, which has a location, coordinate, and latitude, as well as longitude. And with that, we can build a coordinate. And I just created a very simple custom pin class to do that. I'll show you that briefly. So all we're doing is giving it the title, subtitle, and coordinate. And that's it. So if you've used MapKit in the past, nothing too crazy going on there. And then we have our first pin, which is our start pin. We do essentially the exact same thing to get the end address. So let's get the place mark, hopefully not an error. From there, build our coordinate. And once we have the start pin and end pin, we can go ahead and fire off a method to get the route. The way I did it is I just used that method to call this one, and I just first put the start pin and the end pin on the map. And from there, I just very simply get my place mark back using the MK place mark. Just gave it the start, end location. And from here, went ahead and built what is called a direction request. So again, this is all through Apple. It's not any CocoaPod you have to put in like with Google or anything like that. And they will rate limit you if you use it way too frequently. But I've used it, and I mean, if you're giving it a reasonable amount of requests, like it'll keep up with it. So again, just go ahead and create your direction request. You have to give it a source pin or place mark and a destination place mark. Go ahead and tell it what kind of transport type you want. So time you want to use automobile, but of course you have walking and bus is another option as well. And at that point, you can go ahead and fire off a directions request. And just use this method called calculate on your directions. So again, you'll get a response, hopefully, and not an error. So you just guard against the error. If not, just print that out. And then if the response is set, we can go ahead and the response will actually be an array of routes. We can go ahead and just grab the very first route and use that. And the route is actually what's going to be called an overlay. So we just tell MapKit or the map view to add an overlay to it. And then I did some things right here just to give it just a little bit of padding. So if you don't put any padding on the map, then a pin will basically be on like the top end or the bottom end or the exact extremes of the map. So it just looks a little bit better with just a little bit of padding added there. And at that point, you basically just set the region and the route on the map, and you're set. So there is one more method that basically shows you or helps you draw your route. So this right here, basically, you do the render for overlay. This is your route that you're putting on the map. And here you can control a couple things like the stroke color, which is just, hey, do you want the route to be red, purple, whatever you like. You can control the line width, so if you want it a little skinnier or a little larger, and that'll just help you render your route. The next thing I wanted to show you is just in the past, it was very difficult to do custom annotations on your map, or not very difficult, but it took a lot of work to do. You had to build all these custom views and things like that, and in the last couple of years, Apple Maps has made it a lot easier to do so. So you can see if you just don't do anything at all, you get a annotation that looks like that. So a lot of you remember the old one was just like a little tiny pin on the map, and now they've just made the standard one looks a lot larger and more clickable. And if you want to make it custom, it's fairly easy now. And as you can see, I just was able to change the color of the background. I could get rid of the pin icon and put a little coffee cup on there. And something that I like a lot, which hopefully we'll get to implement in the Apple Maps or our Loves app eventually, is something called clustering. And clustering is when you zoom out, if you have locations that are very close, they get grouped together. So instead of having like a lot of pins just on top of one another, you can see like, okay, there's 2 coffee shops here, instead of having, or 7, whatever the number is, a lot of pins on top of one another. So it just makes the map a little bit more clear, a little easier to see, and I think, yeah, it's an overall better look. And,
what does it do when you click on it?
sorry?
The clusters?
Yes.
What does it do when you click on it when you zoom out?
It just depends whatever you want it to do. With this, it's just standard. There's no implementation. So right now, if you just click an icon, it just gets larger. But you can do things like you can show what's called a call out if you want. So you could have the title and subtitle. You could have like a small button on there as well. And if you click the button, you can make it create directions for you in the Apple Maps or Google Maps if you'd like. So that's all extra implementation that you can put in if you want. There's also other options. So let's say I wanted to make, instead of an app just about local coffee, let's say we're going to have plot local coffee shops and local beef jerky shops around Oklahoma City. And what you can do is you can cluster both of them together, and you could show a pie chart on them. So you could say okay, we've got 3 clustered locations here. We got 1 beef jerky shop and 2 coffee shops, which is kind of nice. So just making your map a little bit more readable when you're zoomed out. So in order to do that, I just created what's called an annotation class for my coffee shops. So it's just MK annotation inherits from NS object, which is why you need that. And then I just built a simple annotation that has just the title, subtitle, as well as coordinates. So I just found a handful of local coffee shops here in Oklahoma City and just built an array of a handful of them here. And then in the view controller, very similar. I just imported MapKit, conform to the Delegate, and pulling in my annotations. I went ahead and just used the simple helper function just to set region on a map, just to fly into exactly where I wanted to show all the local coffee shops in Oklahoma City that captures each and every one of them. And then we use this MK map view delegate. And this is what it's going to do is turn the annotations into MK marker annotation views. And that's where you get things like clustering, and you can very simply change how your annotation looks instead of all the custom work that you had to do in the past. So again, here, it's just as simple as creating the color. You go ahead and, so that's actually called the marker tint color is how you control that. And then the image is called just the glyph image on the MK marker annotation view. And then you can also set a clustering identifier. So what you could do is you could say, like, I only want to cluster coffee shops and restaurants together, and all the other ones, they just need to be totally separated out. So that's another option there. So in this example, they're all coffee shops, so the identifier doesn't really matter that much. But that's just an option, just so you know about it. And then just to discuss this code here in the middle, basically dequeuing these annotation views. So this works very similarly to table view, just how you dequeue cells and reuse them over again. Right here, we're doing the same thing. We're just, if we move and get different annotations, we're just reusing those annotations if we can, which is just makes it a little bit more, it's easier on the app. And again, like I said, MapKit is pretty enormous. There's a lot of things you can do with it. You can go in farther with custom callouts and things like that. I look forward to using it more. Like I said, we use Google Maps right now at Loves, but I'd like to use this in the future if possible. Just Apple Maps has come a long way from the embarrassment it was 5 years ago. So I think it's a really nice API. Any other questions?
You said there's rate limiting. Is that per app or is it per account? Is there like a, I was thinking about this the other day with the JavaScript version of this library they have now. Like, is there some kind of cost like using this at all? You get to sort of
My understanding from what I've read is that it's per app, and it is free. I don't know if there's a cost structure if you're really doing something highly intensive, but just from what I've seen, it's free so long as you play by the rules and you're not requesting like every 2 seconds or something like that. Anything else?
Is all the clustering just handled automatically?
It is, right. So we just have, when you have to use the MK marker annotation view to be able to take advantage of that, and then set the clustering identifier here. And it's just, yeah, very, very little legwork on my end. So I know, for example, in the Loves app, we've got 1 million travel stops all over the US. And then if you zoom far out, you can just see like the entire map is just littered with these annotations everywhere. And doing clustering like that might be nice to see like, okay, well, we have like 7 in Florida and like 5 in Missouri, rather than have just, you know, just covered with pins. And then if anybody has any questions or like to see any of this code, I just put on my GitHub. Username's just my name, Patrick Pahl, and that's what the project is called below it, and direct link is below. And thank you very much.